We'll start in a couple of minutes. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Roll call. Everyone's present. Attest to publication.
I saw it.
Thank you, Joni. Approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Lori to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Tina will read our mission, vision, and values.
Mission, Bangor Pride, a small school building big futures. Vision, an innovative small school creating excellence through personalized learning and relationships for all. Values, student-centered small class sizes, continuous improvement, professionalism, opportunity for all. Safety, foster community, and sustainability.
Thank you, Tina. We have some new staff here tonight that we are happy to welcome to the Bangor School District.
So Sally, would you like to go first? Give us a little information about yourself. You bet over there. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you for inviting us tonight. My name is Sally Laton. I'm the new kindergarten teacher.
Sally, on the bottom.
Hold it in.
The end.
Yeah.
Yep.
Better? Okay. So I'm the new kindergarten teacher here at Bangor. I come via Black River Falls for 1 year. Prior to that, I was teaching for 18 years down in Racine, Wisconsin. I got my start at a parochial school teaching first grade, and then moved on to a public school where I taught kindergarten for a few years, but mostly found my home in first grade. I am married and I have two wonderful children of my own who are, I guess I have to sadly say they're grown. One's 20 and one's 22, but they still seem like my little kids to me. But anyway, I am super excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to spending many, many years here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally. Tara?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tara Blount. I'm a 2009 Bangor alumni, so I'm very happy to be back here in Bangor. Since graduating high school, I went to Winona State University for my degrees in early childhood and elementary education, and also coaching. Then I moved on to my kindergarten position in Toma, where I was for 6 years prior to coming here. And I am now the first grade teacher here at Bangor. We are very excited. My husband Dylan is a 2006 graduate from Bangor, And we're just so, it was very important to us once we started our family to get back here and come back to our roots. And now we have 3 sons, 6, 4, and 1. And we're just excited for this next chapter and to be back home and continuing. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you both for coming. So Lisa Horseman is here to do a presentation about the Booster Club press box sign. And I think there's information in your packet.
Yeah, if you look in your packet, pages 6 through 9, that Lisa sent ahead of time. So Lisa?
Hello. We received a gift from Casey Davis Memorial, and we wanted to do something with those funds. It was a little larger than maybe most donations that we do receive. So we chose to hopefully install a sign on the front of the press box. I know that we already have one on the back, but the front is kind of blah, in my opinion. So that would be mounted between the peak and the top of the windows on the front side of the press box. We did go through Highway 35 signs. They came up with 3 designs. As far as the Booster Club goes, as a board, we kind of unanimously voted on one of the options. I mean, I think they're all fine in my opinion. There's just one that we liked best. Just looking for you guys' approval so I can get that ordered and hopefully installed before bad weather. One thing I would like to mention is as far as the installation of the sign goes, there is a 3-foot gap between the back of the bleachers and the actual press box. So they would have to set up some scaffolding to go ahead and properly install that sign on the press box. I just wanted to mention that. That's pretty much it as far as what I had. I'm just looking for approval so I can get that ordered right away.
Any questions for Lisa?
Larger one, the one
Yeah.
you chose?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I like.
Any other questions for Lisa?
Just to clarify, all you're asking from the school district is the approval, correct?
Yep, it's going to be fully funded, obviously, by the Booster Club. We just chose something that we thought maybe the whole community could enjoy versus purchasing a machine for a specific sport. So yes, we're just looking for approval that it fits the district needs and policies, and we can just go ahead and get that ordered.
I would move to approve the sign as presented by the Booster Club.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Joni, seconded by Tina to approve the sign as presented by the Booster Club. It's on page 8 in our handbook, just for verification. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks to the Booster Club. Public comment? Okay. Moving on. Athletic Director report, Mr. Kravick.
Yeah, go up there, Kevin. Before Kevin starts his report, just a reminder that the winter sports guidelines for the Scenic Bluffs are on page 21, 22, and 23. And in those guidelines, we developed this as a Scenic Bluffs group, the superintendents and the ADs. And a lot of it, the information in there is managerial. So what I did is highlighted certain things that Kevin, Rick, and I will talk about tonight. And obviously answer any questions that you may have. Again, I just want to emphasize that we all, I believe, want sports back in the school. I look around and there's lots of sports fans on our board and in the audience, and I know listening tonight. But again, our biggest priority remains bringing our kids back into the school first. And all of the other things that follow that are great as long as we can do it safely. And I think we have a good start this week with bringing back the high school kids in hybrid. I hope that we can continue based on what we see in our municipal reports, La Crosse County, Monroe County. But again, I just want to emphasize, as much as we all want sports back, that it shouldn't be at the expense of not bringing our kids back academically first. So I wanted to make that statement. So Kevin, I will turn it over to you, and Rick and I will also be part of the discussion. So Kevin?
A week ago Thursday, we met as athletic directors and superintendents via Zoom. And what we were working on was Cashton had come up, the superintendent Ryan Alderson had come up with kind of an outline of things that they had put together along with some other schools down in the Ridge and Valley. And what they came up with is, as Mr. Lane was talking about, is the Scenic Bluffs Conference Winter Sports Co-Curricular. This goes along with the WIA has put out a large winter regulations, and they put down, first of all, they had a return to fall sports considerations, and now they've come out with a winter one. And we took a lot of the things off of there and put it into here. You notice, and as you read through it, it says sports specific. It says the WIA sports thing on here. So we did follow the recommendation of the WIA for as much as we could when it came to the conduct of play from the game types of situations. What do you do with the ball? What do you do with how the spacing goes and things like that? The one thing that we talked quite at large about was what are we going to do about fans? If in fact we have fans, do we let a multitude of fans in? I had done a survey amongst all the schools in La Crosse County, and also then I did one with Melrose Mindoro. They had come up with numerous different ways, okay? One of the things that La Crosse County has put out for indoor recreational things is 25% of your capacity or 50 people, okay? Those are recommendations by La Crosse County. Well, on Alaska right now for their indoor for when they were doing things indoor with their volleyball, they were allowing 50 spectators, and that was basically no outside fans at all, except for fans from on Alaska. Okay, they did that also at their outdoor football games. They allowed no fans from visiting teams. Melrose Mindoro is a little bit different because they're in the Dairyland, and they were going with 4 tickets per person. And what they did is they cleared the gym out after the JV. Well, they had a C team, and then they would clear the gym out. They would bring in the JV. They would clear the JV out after that, and then they would bring in the varsity people. The Dairyland also put together kind of like some kind of like tickets that they would give out to each of the kids' parents, and then they would have to present those. I guess I can make a quick statement. Nobody that we have followed right now is charging for admission right now. Okay. That's one of the things that's been unanimous across the board, whether it be in the Mississippi Valley, the Dairyland, or even the Ridge and Valley. Nobody is charging for admission. So, it's easy. What they make them do basically is each kid has to give the coach a list of names that they would put in, much like we did when we were when we qualified for sectional semifinal basketball last year, or even when we were we were at state and we didn't get to play with the girls basketball team. They had to put down a list. Mr. Mullenberg and myself sat at Ennis Friendship High School, and we checked off people as they came in the door. Okay, so we have done that, and I reiterated that to all the ADs and the superintendents that day that did work. Holman is at the 25% rule. They're not even looking at the 50% rule. West Salem right now for what they did indoor and outdoor was 4 tickets. Nobody from any visiting teams could come in. Matt Schneider at Aquinas, now they had a whole book of things that they were doing. They were keeping people outside, bringing them in when another crew came out. They came in different doors. They had a whole thing like that. He didn't think that would work in the wintertime when people would have to stand outside if it was snowing or raining or whatever. But he said it worked during volleyball. So there's a number of, if you look at that, but then if you look at what we came up with as the Scenic Bluffs, we figured our gyms aren't as big as a lot of those other gyms, okay? Our gyms tend to be a little bit smaller. Our gym is approximately 800 when we can seat people, if in fact we use both sides. I've looked at it, I've measured what we have to do with our bench area. And I guess I can give a kind of an example of, let's say, a varsity or JV. We tend to have about 15 kids on varsity, 15 kids on JV. That's 5 kids on the bench, 10 kids on the, or 10 kids on the bench, 5 kids on the floor. Spread them out 6 feet. We're going to need more than what we can get from midcourt to the baseline. So we're going to need to put kids behind us. By doing that, we don't want any fans behind us. So we're going to probably either have to keep those bleachers pushed in, put more seats behind there, and seat people over on the far side over here. So we recommended that, and it kind of got accepted down through the line, that we go 2 tickets per kid, both home and away fans, okay? The question comes up then, well, what about, grandma and grandpa? What about brothers and sisters? What about, the kids, the students? We are lucky enough that this past year that we installed a camera now. We have a huddle focused camera that will be able to live stream all of our events that happen in the gymnasium, whether it's athletics, whether it's concerts, whether it's assemblies. We'll be able to live stream that on our Facebook Live or on a YouTube channel, depending on how we get that set up. And that will be set up hopefully by the first game, which is in November 23rd. So we do have the option of doing that. And I don't know if any of you have watched any games that have been on there. Unalaska has a channel, and it works very well. They do a really good job. So, it's one of those things where we are trying to do everything that is possible to get the kids back to be able to compete against each other. The WI requires tracing sheets so that they know who is coming and who is going for athletics. It's just a matter of staying one step ahead of the game, hopefully doing the job of sanitizing the railways as we go in, the door handles, those kinds of things. But we are very much in favor of cleaning out the gym after the C team game, bring in JV parents. Clean out the JV parents after that game, bring in the varsity parents. And they have to have their name on the list. They have to show maybe identification to get in, but we know most of everybody, and then that's all that we will let in. So that's really the crux of what we all talked about. No concessions. Not anybody is really going to deal with concessions. The handling of money, water bottles and things like that. We don't want to be selling any of that stuff or doing anything like that. So that's really all I have when it comes to getting started or being able to get something going for athletics.
Just a couple additional comments to Kevin's. First of all, our recommendation to the board is that, we are able to have winter sports when we are in person and or hybrid. If we are virtual, then our recommendation is not to have sports during that time period. I think it's the cleanest thing, and obviously we're hoping that we're going to be able to stay in person at the minimum hybrid to allow our students, our athletes to participate. So that's one recommendation. Kevin, can you talk a little bit about co-op sports? Because as you're aware, we co-op a number of sports with West Salem, and we do one with Onalaska. The criteria that we are recommending for those, because again, it may be a situation if Bangor is virtual and West Salem's in person, for consistency's sake. Kevin, can you talk to that?
Yes, as I don't know if any of you know that Onalaska is virtual right now, totally 100%, but yet their school board had met and said that we will continue to play sports. So that led us to think about, okay, what about the girl that we have playing hockey over in Onalaska? If we're virtual, they're virtual, do we still let her play? Also then it would fall into wrestling. I've talked with Ryan Olson, who is now the new AD over there. Him and Josh Brewer, the coach, have been kind of in contact about, talking about wrestling. What are they going to do if, and they really haven't made any decision yet. It seems like a lot of these schools, they're still dealing with their fall issues. They haven't even, looked into, scheduling some of their basketball games or In Ryan's case with Josh is that they had their schedule got all screwed up because they cannot go to triangulars, they can't go to invites, they have to have single meets. So they're dealing with that, and they really haven't gotten into what are they going to do if they're virtual compared to hybrid to full-time or so. Same thing then would have been going with gymnastics and with hockey, boys hockey over there. So, but our opinion is if we are not in school, if we are not physically in school, that we do not compete in athletics, whether it's here or in the co-ops.
Kevin, can you also talk to the change that we're recommending for middle school basketball in terms of how previously that was set up in terms of teams and scheduling, and what we're recommending based on safety measures and
Yeah, that one, that's a work in progress. Today, all day, we were bantering back and forth with athletic directors. I sent an email out this morning asking who, what, where, when, basically, who's staying, who's leaving. We have a couple schools that aren't even sure if they want to sponsor middle school basketball in our conference. Traditionally, we play triangulars. We play once, if not twice a week, triangulars, two teams show up. That has been voted down now, and we are going to play only single games whenever we go, or single teams wherever we go to visit. So basically, we've thrown our schedules away. We sent in all the dates that we have open today, that we, from now until probably about December 7th, and we're going to try to fill it with single games. So in some cases, I know that like Brookwood and us, Cashton and us, we're going to probably try to play double headers. So if Cashton comes to Bangor, we'll play 2 games so we don't have to travel to Cashton. Most schools say if they can play 7 to 8 games, that would be enough, which would be one time around the conference instead of doing the home and away. We're trying to limit that type of thing. Wani Walk does not really want to travel. They have come out and said that, but they're willing to host. So it's kind of one of those things. But Tori said down there, that don't feel bad if you don't want to drive all the way to Wani Walk either. So. But this whole thing with the middle school, it's kind of screwed up right now, and we're trying to deal with it. Ken Clinton, the athletic director at Brookwood, is in charge of scheduling, and him and I will be working on it, hopefully get it done by the end of this week.
Okay.
And same thing with fans for that. We would allow 2 fans for everything, and we have 2 gymnasiums for that, so that makes it a lot easier, where we'll be able to split the crowd. We won't have to have somebody come in and somebody go out. It'll be fans will get to stay there.
Kevin, can you also just clarify when we're talking about, I guess especially, high school basketball, the 2 spectators, but then how we clear the gym between the games, and then what spectators are allowed back in? It's pretty restrictive. Can you address that?
Right.
Too?
What they would have to do is they have to be on a list, and the kids would have to have that list to the coaches by 9 o'clock in the morning. Thursday morning, the boys would have to have their list to our coaches, both the varsity, JV, and C team. That list then would be given to me, and let's say we're traveling someplace, I would then forward that to that team down there on a spreadsheet. And so when our fans would show up, they would be able to check them off. The same would hold true if somebody was coming to us, if Hillsborough was coming to us, they would forward it to me by 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I would be able to make a spreadsheet up and we'd be able to click it off. Most people are, what Hillsborough has done, because Hillsborough played in the Ridge and Valley for volleyball this fall, they didn't even really have anybody at the table when the people came in, but they had the people sign next to their name, next to that student. So you don't even have that contact of somebody, because I don't want to put Colleen in any situation where she has to be in contact with somebody. She can stand back, watch them sign in, and then they can go in. If somebody, and as Hillary said down there, we didn't have anybody sign in that wasn't supposed to be signed in. We didn't check IDs or, facial recognition or anything like that. She said we didn't have anybody sign in that shouldn't have been in. That's always a concern. We thought that when we went to Adam's Friendship last year, Mr. Mullenberger and I saying, what are we going to do if somebody shows up and wants to get in? We're not going to fight them. But nobody ever showed up. And that was, within a number of 6-7 hours, we dealt with that whole thing.
And then Kevin, again, like if it's a high school game, so the JV, whoever the 2 people are, would be allowed in for the JV game. But then if they don't have an athlete that plays You know, you could have a few JV kids that play varsity, they would be allowed back in, but if they do not, then it's simply, then after the JV game, they have to.
Right,
to
and the
leave.
opposite
So-
is if a parent has kids on both levels, they would be on both lists. They would be on a varsity list and a JV list. So everyone's gonna be escorted out, and then they're gonna have to come back in. And I mean, they do this if you go to state basketball or some of those places like that, they escort you out and then let people come back in, so.
And then the last thing, Kevin, do you want to address the mask recommendation that we are recommending?
We are recommending that you wear masks at all times. In our building, it's mandated. We require the kids to do it in school. I've talked with a number of people that do it, most all volleyball players. Once in a while you might see an Eau Claire channel or something like that I've watched where a team might not have masks on. But everywhere else that I've watched on TV and talked to people, they all wear masks when they play volleyball. Now, is that the same as playing basketball? Well, like I said, I think before is that, I've seen a lot of video. I've seen a lot of pictures of the Wisconsin Badger basketball team, either the boys or the girls, practicing, and they have masks on. They have the masks, and they seem to work. Are they going to require it? No. There are sports masks. I got a hold of the guy at BSN yesterday, and they have masks there that are sports specific. Instead of just having the ear loop, they have a loop that goes around the back and then back here, and you can tighten them up. So it's almost like, kind of a gator, but it fits tight. So that's something that we would look at and provide to the kids for basketball. They would be just like a uniform. They would wear it during the game and then turn it in so the coaches could wear it. During practice, they would have to provide their own masks, but at least we would provide a mask for them to wear during the game. And when we go places, this is the question that came up quite often is, well, what if we don't require it at our school, but you do at your school? And the consensus was if we go to your school and you require it, we're wearing masks. If we go to your school and they don't require it, okay, what do we do? And that's kind of a question that is proposed. I would propose that we wear them anyway, for our safety and for the other kids. You just never know when we go to Hillsborough, or if you go to New Lisbon, or if you go wherever. Our kids are going to get used to wearing them, and I think that that's a mandatory thing that we need to provide for them.
Yeah, because some of the schools in our call that Kevin referred to with the ADs and the superintendents, there were a few schools like us that were recommending that you wear it at all time. Other school, and this was specific to basketball, that other schools were saying, okay, you got to be masked at all times except if you're in the game. And again, in talking to Kevin and Rick, they felt that this is doable in terms of the recommendation that we're making, specific to the masks that Kevin's talking about, that we remain masked whether you're in the game or not. So, Rick, is there anything else that you have that Kevin and I?
No, I believe that's everything we discussed.
Any questions for Kevin from the board?
Kevin, I have a question. So the students each get 2 tickets. Does that mean coaches each get 2 tickets for their
Yes.
family as well?
What we talked about is, and they said, was there any, and I guess Hillsborough is kind of setting the precedence, but I also piped in about what we got from the WIA when they said that to us. It went for a traveling party, and traveling party for basketball is 22. And so even with that number, we're gonna probably take that number down, because logistically, we're not going to be able to put 5 coaches and 10 kids on the bench and keep them 6 feet apart. So we're going to have some talks with our coaching staffs about how many coaches do you want on the bench at one time? And then whatever number we come up with, that will be the number that we'll deal with. But yes, the coaches and the players will get 2. Managers, nothing. We won't have any managers. We talked about that. Ball boys, managers, anything like that, they will not be anywhere around. We want to limit the number of people that are in the facility.
So we won't limit, like, for example, JV, we have 2 coaches for JV. When their JV game's done, they leave.
They would have to sit someplace else, get out of the way. If nothing else, stay in the locker room, do whatever, yes.
Okay.
We're gonna have to limit the number of people in there.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify on the coaches, is it just the head coach then that gets the 2 for, say, varsity head coach? gets the 2 tickets for that game. Like I said, we clear the gym after the JV game. His guests, the varsity, or excuse me, the head coach of the JV, his guests then would leave
Yes,
for the varsity. Okay,
yeah. And we're pretty much mandated, we have to have at least two coaches on the bench
right.
in case of something happening, a disqualification, whatever.
Mhm.
So if they decide that we want to go 3, if that's kind of what we come up with for both the boys and the girls, then that's the number that we'll use. But we won't use the 22 that is allowed by the WIA.
Okay.
So is there still some kind of situation where if we start, let's just say basketball, we start basketball because we are or we're in-person learning, and then for whatever reason, we have to resume virtual. Do we lose our whole season then?
No, the nice thing that's going to be, and we as ADs have talked about this, what we have tried to do schedule-wise is front load our schedule. And that meaning we tried to get as many games as we can as early in the season as we can. With knowing if the fact is a school, be it us, be it Hillsborough, whatever it's has to go virtual, has to cancel a few games, they postpone those games. We'll be able to pick them up later in January, February. So we won't have to cancel the season at all. Is there going to be a state tournament? Probably not. The WIA has not officially said no. So it really isn't going to matter how many games you play. Right now, the maximum games you can play is 24. I don't know of anybody that's going to play 24 games. We're looking at right now playing someplace around 18 games, maybe 20 if anything holiday comes in there. We've limited the number just because we can't play 4 days a week. 3 days a week is putting it at the max. But if we go just 2 games and get that number of weeks in there, because they cut 3 weeks out of the season.
Kevin, when does the season start?
The season for the girls starts November 16th and the guys start November 23rd. First girl game is on November 23rd and the first boy game is Friday, the 4th of
Okay.
December.
Thank you.
What about middle school, Kevin?
Middle school is a whole nother thing. We were supposed to start November 5th. We were going to start practice next week, get things going, but that's, like I said, on hold right now. We're probably not going to start until the week after just because things are going on and we're going to have to notify all of our officials because we've had everything contracted. So we're looking at, I put the sign up sheet up and so that, the 7th and 8th graders can start to sign up for basketball and get, kind of an idea. And I told them, maybe end of next week, we might be able to start practice because they're back all 100%.
And are those dates regardless of if we're hybrid or what's that?
The dates of
For high
the starting time, is that what you're asking? The starting dates are set in by the WIA. Those are the earliest possible dates that we can start. We can start anytime after that, depending on whether we're virtual or hybrid or full-time. If we're virtual, obviously we won't start at all. And then we still have to have an X amount of days of practice before you can have your first contest. And so in many cases, if we don't start on the 23rd, let's say for the boys or even for the girls, we don't start on the 16th, we will not be able to play that first game because we would not have enough practices according to WI regulations.
But according to what you're saying now, if the high school starting hybrid this week, they'll start practices.
They would be able to start practice, yes.
And so the school that we're playing, if they are virtual, then we will not play, then that game will get canceled or rescheduled.
Depending on what their school board had decided what to do.
But okay, so my concern then, if we're going to play a basketball team that's virtual, but then our co-op kids can't play only when we're virtual, I'm trying to correlate
No,
the
they would
difference.
not be able to play.
Right, but we're able to play a team that is virtual. So like, I don't understand the difference between that. So
Well, I guess what we're trying to do and say is that we're going to control our kids at all times. And by doing that is if we are hybrid or full-time, we are allowed to play. If we are virtual, where we're not here in the physically in the building, whether it's because of cases in the community, cases in the school, or staff missing, we go virtual, we will not allow our kids to participate.
And does busing change at all to these events? If, like, busing our students there, so if you're junior, or if you're, if your teams are not playing together, are you busing separate, or are they able to go with their parents, or how do you
Many
correlate
cases-
that?
Many cases, Unalaska, I know, is allowing parents, or I don't want to say allowing, they're requesting that their parents transport them. If they can't, then they would ride a bus. That was the one thing that we hadn't talked about is what kind of regulations we put on busing. I know Viroqua, I talked with Eric Anderson over there this afternoon, and he said that they can allow 25 on a bus right now when they travel for sporting events. So they have reduced their number of athletes, or like he said, is that they allow parents to take their kids.
Okay, so this might be a better question. If you're going to play a team that you know has a very high risk, can you cancel at that point?
We can cancel at any time, yes.
Okay.
That would be an administration decision. You
Okay.
bet.
Perfect.
And like I said, the number of games isn't conducive to where we go postseason. And prior to that, you might not, because you have to have X amount of games to get into the playoffs or whatever. That's thrown out the window this season.
Any other questions for Kevin?
Could kids drive themselves?
No. That's stated in the student handbook.
I don't have a question, more just a comment that I'm really uneasy about the encouraging the parents to take their own kids there, and from the liability aspect. I realize if they sign off on that the school really isn't liable, but it's kind of sketchy if we encourage the families to drive their own kids should something happen to and from. But I understand we have to make exceptions, but I would like that clarified with our liability provider.
Yeah, I guess the part, Paul, where you are correct is encouraging them to do it. We do have the clause in our athletic handbook that says that a parent would like to take it has to be written approval, those types of things. And then only that child can ride with that parent. You can't take 3 other kids with you or anything like that. So it is in our handbook, but again, encouraging is something that.
And Paul, I can definitely check with our liability carrier on that, so.
Anything else? Any other questions? This is something that we will need to, with this right around the corner, we'll need to make a decision tonight.
So Julie, again, the action would be to approve the Scenic Bluffs Conference guidelines with, included with our own recommendations that Kevin mentioned.
And have we, just one last question, sorry, have we talked to the co-ops for those sports so that those students aren't punished in any way for the fact that they're not able to practice or be at those events due to our policy?
No, I haven't talked to them yet because we want to get a decision, and then that discussion will be taking place.
Okay. I would just really hope that those students wouldn't be punished for something that we're doing here
Right.
versus
And,
their.
you know, that's something that will be addressed, and I'm sure that, you know, you hope that it never happens, but I will be addressed with the ADs of those, and then they should get a hold of their coaching staff and let them know what our policy is going to be.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no other questions, I'll make a motion to approve the winter sports Scenic Bluffs guidelines with our addendums in there for our school.
I'll second.
Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Lori to approve the Scenic Bluffs Conference Winter Sports Co-Curricular Guidelines 2020 with our specific Bangor additions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
So next, Julie, on the agenda is open gym and co-curricular activities, and I'll have both Kevin and Rick speak to that. I do want to remind the board that in terms of the open gym guidelines, we passed those in July, so it's not another motion to approve it since I'll have Kevin review the guidelines, obviously, and then have Rick discuss the co-curricular activities that we're looking at. So, Kevin?
What we are looking at for open gyms is, again, if we are virtual, we have no open gyms. Everything is, the building facilities are locked up. We don't let anybody in. If we go some form of hybrid, what we are doing is we are opening up the facilities for basketball, both boys and girls. We're opening it up for volleyball and for weightlifting. And I, along with the coaches, have put out together a schedule of when they would meet. We're trying to limit the number of people in there, much like we did this summer. Last night, we had boys basketball, and what we did is they went juniors and seniors from 3:30 till 4:30, and then they went freshmen and sophomores from 4:30 till 5:30. To say the opposite, in the weight room, we went freshmen, sophomores from 3:30 to 4:15, and then juniors and seniors, so that if they wanted to do both. This was an email that was sent out to all of the students in the district, in the high school, notifying them of their times. Volleyball wants to practice on Mondays, but he couldn't last night because his mother was getting out of the hospital. He wants to practice on Monday nights, or just practice. I got to take that word back. He just wanted to have the open gym and let him hit it around. And then girls basketball wants to have an open gym on Thursday night. And it is open, and it is open to anybody in the school district that is 9 through 12. If they want to come and just shoot around and they're not intending to play for the season, that's fine. Last night, Jake said that he had about 9 for each session, and they were all masked up, and they practice that way. We had 1 for weightlifting. 1 came as a junior and senior, came later. So as long as we are somehow in hybrid or full-time, we'd like to open up the gyms and limit the number. And we are still taking their temperature when they come in, much like we did. We have the health advisory sheet that we use during the summertime. They have to have that signed, and everybody was okay with that.
And for our activities such as FFA, FCCLA, forensics, jazz choir, jazz band, and the rest of ours, under the same guidelines with distancing and masks, spacing and temperature taking, those will be starting as well, as long as we are either hybrid or fully in person. So under the same guidelines, all of our co-curriculars other than sports can do the same thing.
Can someone remind me, you said we approved the open gym in July. What did we approve? I don't recall that. I recall the discussion, but I don't recall approving it.
Yeah, the format, so Kevin presented on that, Paul, you know, how it was going to be set up, how it was going to be run, and then we voted on it.
So back in July, I thought it took on a different meaning because there were no organized sports taking place.
Right.
Not that they're required, you know, we have WIAA sports and we have practice, that's one thing. So let's say those are required contacts. I know we're not voting on this tonight, but I'm voicing my opposition to the open gyms because all the work we've all put in to mitigate contact, plexiglass dividers, spacing between everything, and encouraging unnecessary contacts. I know some people think sports are necessary. I'm a sports fan myself. I just don't think this is a smart thing to do. I think we're going against everything we've worked to mitigate when we have, I'm going to call them unnecessary events or contact opportunities. I know it's not actionable. That's my 2 cents, and I think it's the wrong thing to do. To your point, Dave, the first and most important thing is to make sure that we have everybody in person in class. Then why in the hell are we encouraging more contacts in the school? I just think that's careless. That's all I have to say.
But isn't this similar to practice? Like, isn't this as similar to if we start practice next week?
But if they have an organized team, that's what I'm saying, Tina, I'm using the words necessary. It's an organized, official WIAA team that's having an organized practice, that's one thing. Those you kind of, again, have to have because you have the team. If we're approving the sport, we have to have practice. But to have additional, in my opinion, unnecessary open gyms, it's just that, it's unnecessary. Now, you could say, well, is it going to be any worse if they're practicing 3 nights a week? And I would say, yes, it is, because they're practicing 3 nights a week and the other 2 nights are still coming in. That's 2 more opportunities for contacts and so on. So that's,
One question I have, once the practice season or the season start, for the winter sports, will there be any open gyms during the weeks that there is a season going on with practices, and how is that going to be handled?
We have never had that before, although the weight room had been opened, if someone was willing to open it up for anybody that wasn't in a season. Many of the coaches do require their student athletes to lift during practice. I know Mr. Lockenberg has weight classes, so a lot of those kids that aren't even out for, let's say, basketball or wrestling or hockey, they lift during the day anyway. But traditionally, no, we've never had any open gyms during the course of the season.
so what are we
Okay.
approving? What are we talking about tonight then, for the next 2 weeks?
For the,
Week and a half?
Until the start of basketball.
Was the normal Wednesday night, 6 o'clock, that wasn't an open gym then? That was just an old timers getting together type of thing?
When was that?
All winter, Wednesday night, 6
Oh,
o'clock?
that would be a facilities.
Okay, so it wasn't an open gym with the school, it was, because I mean, board meetings, they would always be coming in and out
Yeah, that's,
playing ball, so.
yeah. As far
okay.
as I've always thought, that was something that is much like a non-sponsored
Okay.
school athletics.
All right.
Or not athletics, just a.
Because I know a lot of our, I shouldn't say a lot, there were several of our high school boys that would partake in it.
Right,
So
and
now, I was just thinking it was an
they have
open
the
gym.
right to do that at any
Right.
time. Whether their coaches would allow that is a whole nother story.
Okay,
Okay. So faculty use by outside groups is the next topic. What?
Facility use.
Oh, facility, I'm sorry. Facility use of the outside groups.
Okay, obviously to, the concerns that have been expressed, and as I said, when we started the whole discussion, that our priority needs to be bringing our kids back first, and getting, if our sports are able to play our sports, that comes second. And again, but those are controlled internally by staff. With outside groups, it's going to be very, very difficult to have that type of control. Right now, our custodians are spending a ton of time, obviously, as you can see, with cleaning for just the normal part of the day. And in terms of facility use, for those of you that aren't aware, and in normal times, it's fantastic. We have a ton of groups, specifically, like Great Northwest and other organizations that run tournaments, practices. Our facilities are never closed, very honestly, during that time. But because of COVID and the inability to control those variables outside of our control as a school, our recommendation is that facility use by outside groups would not be allowed for the next couple of months. And what we would do is assess this quarterly. So in January, our hope is, I mean, wouldn't it be fantastic if everything had returned to normal? But in terms of what we control, the facility use is something I believe that would be very, very difficult. So our recommendation is no outside groups, and we reassess quarterly, and again, it'd be January. So.
Does that require a motion?
I think that I would, because I think it needs to be clear what we are recommending. Joni?
And I just want to clarify, this isn't only outside sports. This is churches, Boy Scouts, correct?
Yes, yes. Because we've had those other groups, to your point, Julie, call and wonder, and they were very understanding why. And I know there's a big event, in fact, I believe, looking at Mike on this, group that wanted to come in, I think February or something, that it's always been a thing that this outside group, and it's a fantastic group, but again, the ability to control that is very difficult, so.
I think
And
the
we'll look
the
at the-
word that needs to be added to that is school sponsored. I think if we use that word school sponsored, we know that we are with the liability, our staff would be in charge of it. Would be something like that instead of just.
So non-school sponsored.
Yes, exactly.
So for instance, like today, our student council sponsors the blood drive, and that's why we would allow,
Yes, exactly.
okay.
Good clarification, thank you. So I entertain a motion, and we will relook at this in January.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the guidelines to prohibit facility use by non-school sponsored groups and to be reevaluated quarterly.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Joni, seconded by Paul, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, moving on, approval of our minutes from open session Wednesday, September 16th. Page 10,
I'll make a motion to approve the Wednesday, September 16 minutes.
Second,
motion made by Shelley, seconded by Joni to approve open session Wednesday, September 16th, 2020. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Closed session Wednesday, September 16th.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Lori, seconded by Tina to approve closed session Wednesday, September 16th. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Special meeting Wednesday, September 23rd.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion made by Paul, seconded by Tina to approve special meeting minutes Wednesday, September 23rd. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll
Opposed?
abstain.
Thank you, Joni. Opposed? Motion carried. Special meeting Wednesday, September 30th.
I'll make a
Make-
motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Lori, seconded by Shelley to approve special meeting Wednesday, September 13th. All in favor?
September 30th.
Or September 30th. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll
Opposed?
abstain.
Thank you. Okay, on to the vouchers.
Okay, on the vouchers, we received some questions, and Lori, I'll ask you if, Angie responded to yours and good on that. Otherwise, we did not receive any questions on the vouchers, but be glad to try to answer if you do have additional questions.
Why are we paying Don, a retired administrator, for Dropbox? What is that?
Rick, will you respond to that? There was a question.
So what's on there are the scholarships that Hannah didn't have transferred yet, the database for that. And it was a last minute thing. He didn't want to lose them. And so what we're working on is transferring those to our guidance counselor, Hannah Schultz. So that's why that happened. It was shared with our guidance counselor, correct? It was a shared Dropbox, and we didn't want to lose that database, so we're transferring them to a separate one now. Correct.
Any other questions for Dave?
I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers.
Second.
Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Lori to approve the vouchers. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Activity account.
Again, there weren't any questions on that. I just wanted to highlight, I won't go, you'll see that there is a in a number of accounts, a good deal of money. And again, these were because of things that were not, because of COVID and all that. I'll just give you an example, like 617 FFA, they have a very healthy account balance. Obviously, that would have been spent down quite a bit if they would have been able to go to the FFA convention. And that's similar to, you look at the Music Choir Band Council. We'll be talking about the Washington DC trip later. Again, just like I said last night during the budget meeting annual hearing, those had an impact. So if you see some of those healthy accounts, that was probably a lot of the reason why. So.
I'll move to approve the activity account.
Second.
Motion made by Joni, seconded by Tina to approve the activity account. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Finance, financial report.
Okay, and that's on page 18 of your packet. Under receipts, state of Wisconsin, number one, equalization aid, 587,954. That's 15% of our total for the year. Number two is sparsity aid, and again, that's through the state, and it's based on the number of kids per square mile in terms of transportation. That's 234,470. Then number four, early college credit program. That is actually a reimbursement from the state. And what they do is they, at the end of the year, they look at the amount of early college credit program classes that were taken, and then they end up reimbursing you 25% for that. So that is at 1,278. B, property taxes, Monroe County, $40,336.25. That was the last delayed payment from July. Then skipping down to miscellaneous, just want to highlight some donations. Number three, Wisconsin Beef Council donated $40 to the FACE program. So thank you to the Beef Council for that. There was a number four, a classroom supply donation to second grade in the amount of $50. So thank you for that. And then number six, La Crosse Community Foundation. And they do a donation every year. And what that is specifically, Angie put this in our Fund 21, and it's for the food pantry. So when we are lacking certain items, the person that does our food pantry can go to Hanson's and purchase that. So that is $1,490. So total revenue for the period of September 12th to October 15th, $872,087.97. Total expenditures, $789,605.80. And so balance on hand on October 15th was $512,073.82. Any questions on the?
Dave,
Financial.
under E miscellaneous, number 5.
Yes, that was one of the teachers that resigned after school started.
Okay,
And so that was a payment towards that.
thank you.
Move for approval of the financial report.
Second.
Motion made by Paul, seconded by Joni to approve the financial report. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Old business, none listed. Committee reports, none listed. Board President's agenda, school board convention is going virtual this year, January 20th to the 22nd in January 2021.
And again, if anybody wants to join via virtual format, let me know. Obviously, we won't have to reserve any rooms this year. That's a joke. Okay. So, but if you do want to, please let me know, and we will get you registered for that.
Thank you. correspondence.
Okay, I've a couple of things. I'll pass around a thank you note. It's actually from St. Paul's. They're thanking us for providing their daily lunches, under the federal program that provides lunches for anybody in the community 18 and under. So they have been part of that. And so a very nice note from person at the church council on that. So I'll pass that around. And then congratulations to our own Julie Myers for having achieved a level 3 in the WASB member recognition program. So I'd like to pass that around. Congratulations, Julie.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Julie.
Thank you. So CISA 4 report, we had a meeting October 7th. We hired a new social worker, which is, does come to Bangor, and I see Mr. Chaplin has that on his agenda, so I'll let him talk about that. Something exciting that happened at CISA this year, they received the largest grant in CISA 4 history. It's part of the CARES Act for mental health. It's funded through the Federal CARES Act. The grant is under direction of Tracy Herlitzka from our CISA 4. The 2-year grant was $3.4 million. So, and she did do a presentation and talked us through their process of goals, budgeting, hiring. It was really, the goals is to increase access to effective coaching for systemic implementation of school-based mental health, including trauma-sensitive social emotional learning, and to increase systemic implementation, including sensitive or trauma-sensitive care for school district teams receiving coaching through the Wisconsin Center for Resilient Schools. They have hired a project coordinator, and they've hired 8 regional coaches that will serve schools around the state for Wisconsin. So pretty exciting for CISA 4. Lots of work, lots of interviewing, but they're pretty excited. And I think that's all I have. We'll meet again in November. Any questions? Thank you. Okay, we'll start with administrators' reports. Mr. Chaplin.
I didn't get to push the button last night, so I feel fancy tonight. So the first thing I have on there is the October 1 special education count. Our official count that goes to DPI is 58 students. That is not reflective as it is today. We got a few more students move in already. So that's the official count, but not reflective as of today. We have 15 students with a 504 plan, and we have 15 students at St. Paul's that also have a plan as well. And with the 5 new referrals, that's actually up to 8 as of today. So not, those are official numbers, but those, like I said, aren't reflective of what it actually is today. As Julie said, CISA 4 has a new social worker. For the past 4 years, we've been contracting with CISA for a 1 day a week social worker because of that she got hired later on in the year here. It's actually going to be a little more than 1 day a week. But her name is Erin Hilsheim. Her last job was at Monroe County. I believe in the behavioral mental health part of Monroe County. So that fits some of our needs. Her other 2 districts, I believe, are Waniwak Center and Lafarge. So welcome her. And then last thing is everyone's favorite thing is state testing. The dates are listed below. Again, we don't have a waiver from the state to not do that. So those are still on.
Any questions for Mr. Chaplin? Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Julie. Just a learning update. So this is ending our third week of face-to-face instruction. It's gone really well. I want to thank the staff for their execution of the protocols that we put in place. Everybody worked really hard on this to get kids back to school safely, and it is going very well. It is different for the teachers. I want everybody to understand how different it is. The amount of face-to-face time with students is it's significantly more. And because of safety and cohorting and all those things we need to do. So it does eat into the planning and that sort of thing. So a lot of extra time for our staff. I want to recognize them for their efforts there. Hopefully we can get back to more of a normalcy in the near future. Routines though are in place, and the kids are happy to be back at school. You can see on their faces, and it's just, like I've said a million times, that the school is simply a structure without kids in it, and we're back to being in school. We are now rolling into doing some of our F&P testing, so we can help our learners and our staff predict or forecast where they need to be with students and their reading skills. That information is very important to instructional practices, and we're wrapping that up right now, probably more through next week. Once we get done with the MAPS testing, we'll look closer at, the F&P testing. Then we'll look closer at the MAPS testing. It's a screener that we do, and we'll get that executed probably into November. I don't want to pile too much up. And it's kind of difficult right now because if you're theoretically planning in 5-day increments, and some of this stuff doesn't take just 5 days to execute. So how we do that has to be carefully planned and prepared for, and alternative plans have to be put in place too. So we're right there. I want to thank again the PTO for we got the books that they purchased, a book for each child to take home, and I'm very excited to get those books. We got those books delivered, and they're in the kids' hands, and I just appreciate what the PTO does and their focus on our students. That's kind of an update. Things are going really well.
Any questions for Mike regarding in face-to-face?
Parent-teacher conferences, we are going to switch that up and go virtual with the conferences, so it'll be Zoom meetings. We're using a app or a program called Sign Up Genius. We've asked JMC to put in parameters for scheduling conferences by parents so they can see what times are available and choose them. It's a simpler format. Skyward in the other districts has been doing that for a while. But Sign Up Genius, when we came back face-to-face, our 4K through first grade staff wanted to have parents come in, meet the teacher, bring some things in. So we had to schedule that pretty much like a parent-teacher conference, only in person. Those staff members played with Sign Up Genius and got it functional. We're great. And we're going to expand that. Actually, I think right through the high school, if that's not. So parents will be, probably around the first week in November, we'll be sending out those links, and parents will be able to sign up. It's a little bit different at my level because it's one teacher in a sense, along with the specialist, whereas middle high school, you have far more teachers to schedule, but that's what we're working on right now.
Any questions for Mr. Johnson? Okay. Anything else, Mike?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mullenberg.
Thank you, Julie. An update for us. It's been nice to get more students back in the building. We're up to 3/4 of them. A lot of the protocols, like Mike said, that we put into place, the staff have been carrying out. We have longer passing periods, about 7 minutes. So teachers between every class are sanitizing their desks. They're finding it's taking about 6 minutes. So I think we're on with that, having to use gloves and the cleaners and chemicals and things. And then the wait time and the dry time. Lunch with more students here. We're also using half of the gym. We have 24 tables in here, 16 smaller tables on the stage that are socially distanced, and then 47 in the gym, so that we can fit 2 grades of our middle school in here at a time. And the other ones are eating in the cafeteria, and we'll rotate that. So that's been a little bit of a change up. The backpacks are working well, kids taking things to classes. The screenings in the morning are going well. Parents are doing a great job with the pickup area out in the parking lot with the change there. Our release times are working with the people getting picked up going first, and then the buses, so they can get out of there before the walkers go. So that's been working out as well. Appreciate the work that the staff is with the cleaning and all the sanitizing in between, and then the supervision that goes along with the hallways as well. And with that increased time, we've been able to kind of stagger when kids are in the hallway, which has been good. We are also looking at trying to get our map testing screener in early November, hopefully at least for our middle school, and then maybe a little bit later after that for our high school, so we can set up our interventions and kind of see the level that the kids are at for those as well. So all in all, a lot of things that we put into place are going well. We've modified or tweaked a few things here and there. But it's been nice to, like I said, to have all the middle schoolers back and some of the high schoolers for sure. Next, the PSAT. We did have 17 high school juniors take the PSAT on Wednesday, October 14th. I had to do a little research on this. I wasn't completely, I don't run it, Ms. Schultz does, but approximately 1.5 million students take it in the United States each year. And of those, about 50,000 receive recognition. And then of those 50,000, about 16,000 of the higher scores will be notified that they have qualified as semifinalists. And then after that, then it can go on to be National Merit Scholars. And that is by state. They take the highest in each state as well. And that's a high number for us that have taken the test. I think last year we had 5. Virtual parent-teacher conferences, like Mike said, same thing. Sign Up Genius, what we're able to do is put all of our teachers in tabs so that parents will be able to go to each one that they need. So they're all in one location with one link. It'd be a similar format as the sign up there. Washington DC trip. I know Mrs. Rigel would like to have that on the agenda, so I'll let Jean kind of speak to that, please.
Okay, I know everybody would love to go. Right now, my feeling is I don't think we should go this spring because there are too many variables that we just don't know. Some of them being like right now, you can't tour the Capitol. That's a half of a day that we spend there. The Smithsonian's only allows so many people in at a time. And if things are going to be limited to group size, we're always going to exceed that group size. It's just going to be logistically, I foresee it being too much time where we can't keep people occupied. And I just don't think it's worth going that far to sit in a hotel. If we can't get into certain things, or if only some of us can get in at a time and then you have to wait while the rest of them get into there, I just don't see it feasible, and I don't see it being worth the money that people put into it. And the reason I want to look at it is because we should have already done our fundraiser. That also is difficult in these times to be able to do that and raise enough funds, and it is a pricey trip. So that's always been a big push to help those who can't afford the trip. And it's just a lot harder to do right now. I do still have money in the account that I kept from last year that we're going to go again this year when we were going to take them. I would certainly give that all back. It's right away. And then I would have to look at anything that they raised as funds to. Ordinarily, when you do fundraising and you don't go on the trip, the money stays in the account. This is a different case. That money would go back to them. So they would end up, well, they wouldn't be ahead of the game because they wouldn't make the trip, but they would get their money back from the fundraising also, of course, because we wouldn't keep it. But I just don't see that it's a good thing to do to put us all on buses for 20 hours and get there and not be able to do half of what we need to do. It's unfortunate, but I just don't see it being feasible. But I didn't want to be the only one to make the decision, I guess. That's where I stand.
Doesn't seem like it would make a whole lot of sense. I would agree.
Yeah, I agree too. I don't think it's safe. What if someone gets sick when you're there? How will you get them back? What if a parent gets sick? What if your bus driver gets sick? What if you get sick, Mrs. Wright?
Oh, I'd be fine. No.
I
no,
think
it's
there's
not-
lots
it's
of
not a joking
variables.
matter. It's
There's
just
too many
there are
uncontrolled.
variables
Yep.
that are uncontrollable. And especially right now, the number of people being allowed, and I don't see that changing because I don't see things getting better quicker. So I don't see, there may be places that you can't go at all, or like I said, if we can't all get into a place, what do I do with 56 graders and keep them occupied that far from home and an hour from the hotel? Or it's just, I don't see how it would work out well.
I have to agree too. Disappointing, but yeah, definitely agree.
Absolutely disappointing.
Yeah.
But if you get to that point, like, it could always be revisited, and you could also look at still sending, like, they would be in 8th grade at that point, but you could still reconsider what grades you would go at, and they may not be out actually the opportunity just at this time. Is that what we're
Right.
saying?
Yeah, it's
Perhaps.
always going to be, I don't know that we would want to take 3 grades at a time next year. That would be quite an undertaking. Or maybe 2, and then the following year 2, so we could get everybody looped in. Just because of the number of, you have to have someone that knows where they're going out there and knows what, because I can't, one person shouldn't have that many kids that they're looking at one time. And you can do it with more, like in the years past, I've gone with more expensive tour groups where you have a tour guide with you all day long. That's different. I have cut costs because it was becoming cost prohibitive for so many families. And I do I do the tour guiding myself except for half of one day. Otherwise, it's me that describes everything and me that takes them to different places. And I can't do that many people. So it would have to be a different scenario somewhat if we take too many more, because I can only do so much of that. It's very doable if people are willing to pay a little more to get the tour guides that are with you from the minute your day starts till you take them back to go to bed at night. So it is doable, but it is a little more expensive.
And right now, don't we have 2 big classes in the middle school right now? So those are larger classes to begin with. Yeah, it's disappointing, but totally understandable, and I agree with you.
Any other questions, or what else do we need to do for Jean?
If you want, just so it's official, Julie, we could, make a motion, that the trip is canceled for this year.
Okay, I think that's a good idea.
I'll make a motion that the Washington DC trip is canceled for the spring of 2021.
Second.
Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Paul, to cancel the Washington DC trip for spring 2021. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Mr. Mullenberg? Okay. Any questions for Mr. Mullenberg? All right, Mr. Lane.
Thank you, Julie. We, letter A, open enrollment alternative applications, we don't have any for this meeting. So no action, obviously, on that. B, third Friday in September student count, as I mentioned last night, in terms of enrollment, we are doing well, especially in terms of when I hear other districts, the volatility of their open enrollment and different things there. So just again, the numbers, we are down 8 students from last year. And when I say 8 students, that means FTEs, full-time equivalency, which is what our state aid is based on. And in terms of a head count, which is just the number of students present in the building, we are down 17 students from there. But again, that FTE number is what drives our state aid. And the reason that's down 8 students is we had a smaller 4K coming in, and we knew that. So in our 4K population, we're down 11 students. So the other thing, when we figure out state aid, remember it's on a 3-year rolling average. So my hope, obviously, next year is you don't have as much of a hit because it is averaged out over 3 years. So next year, I'm hoping that we will be up. But as I said, the numbers are solid from in terms of third Friday count. Then I did want to, in terms of enrollment, I just wanted to highlight a few things because I have been getting a number of questions about open enrollment and where we're at and everything. So I had Jody Kotek, who is my administrative assistant, but she handles the open enrollment. So right now, and this is as of today, and she's able to go into the data and drill down pretty deeply. So right at this point, we have, and this is total, so this is students that have been open enrolled for years up to this point. We have 101 students going out, and we have 98 students coming in. Now, again, remember those alternative apps change that every month. So again, I'm hoping that next month, if we have open enrollment apps, that they're coming in. But again, when you have open enrollment apps, the reason they're so volatile is that, again, you can't count on those in terms of figuring out your aid and all of that. We use a 3-year rolling average to budget for that. And then actually in terms of budget, it really is not figured out. It's not figured out until the end of the fiscal year. One other thing I wanted to, because I had questions on this from some community members that want to know about the open enrollment apps since July 1st. And we have a total of 19 that were open enrolled since July 1st. And out of that group of 19, 14 have never attended our school. Again, a lot of times those open enrollment apps are moves that are made in the middle of the year. And in that group of 19, we had one family from La Crosse that had 6 students, but all of their students were attending in La Crosse. So those, again, a lot of cases, it's difficult when they have been students in other districts. So the 5 that have been attending our district, there was a family of 3 that attended Cashton and another family of 2 that are attending Cashton. So I just wanted to give you some more background on third Friday count, but also the open enrollment numbers. So questions? Okay, next is approved 660301 agreement for participation in the Cooley Region Virtual School with school districts of La Crosse, Holmen, Alaska, and West Salem. Again, just as a review, we approved a memorandum of understanding in July. So this is more the official action, and 660301 set up the parameters for participation in that grouping, and we have a number of 66031s with West Salem, special education being the main one. So on in your packet, I included on page 29 the budget piece of how this was figured out. Again, I will just emphasize that it was quite an undertaking by the districts, and their curriculum directors were the ones that really did a tremendous amount of work. And the curriculum directors in those 4 districts, but then Mike and Rick also had a ton of work with this. And so I want to thank them for that. So on pages 30 through 35, it lays out the agreement. And basically, This is a 10-year, well, it's a 10-year agreement in the sense of cost, and, but a district can get out at the end of a year. So if it wouldn't be working, a district could go out if they decided to do that. Again, I'll just remind the board that we have 50 students in this Cooley Region Virtual School. And if we wouldn't have provided this option, I'm not sure what would have happened. Again, options would have been open enrollment in another type of virtual school. It could have been homeschooling. So on that cost sheet, I laid those things out for you. So the other thing I wanted to, in terms of costs, remind the board, and you'll find it on page 32, the per pupil costs, and it says districts will provide a proportional amount of staffing based on district enrollment in the CRVA. If a district is not able to provide proportional staffing, they may be obligated to compensate other districts for disproportionate usage. And that's what happened in our elementary, because we didn't have, as I said, if we would have had 15 kids in first grade or 16 kids in fourth grade, we would have provided a teacher, which actually, would have been additional costs. So when that did not happen, because between grades K, kindergarten and 7, we have 25 students. So West Salem took our students, and then we agreed upon the charge of $3,000 per student for the year. And then the cost in the 8 to 12 is more of a monitoring thing, and where a number of teachers from Bangor, Holman, West Salem are providing the monitoring for that. So that is a 66031 agreement. And if there's any questions.
So we will approve this each year then? We will look at it. I mean, obviously the 10 years is what you're locked into for cost, but we will determine the need for it every year?
Yeah, and what I would just say, Joni, to that question, the 10-year cost, if you look on page 31, if for whatever reason we decided to get out, and we would act on it in May if we're going to continue in or opt out. So the cost of belonging to the Wisconsin e-school network, and again, La Crosse district is the one that is the fiscal agent for all this, that we could get out, but then our annual cost is $440 to belong to the network. And then if we did, we'd still be on the hook for the $4,400 total for the 10 years. So, but again, I just commend the people that I commend the former superintendents from West Salem and La Crosse that had the vision, because they saw this coming. But again, I commend the curriculum directors and Rick and Maya. I mean, I just, again, remember we had 3,000 students at one point in the Cooley Region Virtual Academy. And now I believe it's, Mike and Rick, I'm looking at you, I think it's approximately 1,800, 1,900 in that neighborhood. So it's given a lot option to a lot of students across our 5 districts.
Not saying that it would happen, but if there would, say 2 years from now, we don't feel there's a need for it, we would get out, and then 3 years, there is a need. Are we able to get back in? I mean, once we bow out?
Yeah, I don't know, Shelley, I'd have to ask on that. There is another, and in fact, on my notes, I talk about the Rural Virtual Academy. It was actually out of Medford, because if you remember, originally we weren't part of the consortium here. And so that would be an option in the future. I mean, they have 40 schools in their virtual academy, and the need was so great that they said we just couldn't take on more schools. So yeah, I think I can ask specific to that. I would assume that they would not jump in and out, and that thing might not be look on it with all favor, but we can certainly. Yeah, so.
But you may be willing to pay the annual cost because it depends on how many kids are enrolled. So we may just pay that cost just to stay in, I mean, at that time.
So I entertain a motion to accept this agreement contract.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Tina, seconded by Shelley to approve the 66.0301 agreement for participation in the Cooley Region Virtual School with school districts of La Crosse, Holmen, Onalaska, and West Salem. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. D, discussion on 2021 staff wage increases. I brought this up last night at the annual meeting budget hearing. And so I wanted to give you, again, this is discussion tonight, and then if you're in favor of it, we put it on for board action at our November 18th meeting. So we gave you an approximate figure of 75,000, but I had Angie break it down more specifically. So the total cost, if we were to give a CPI, and the CPI is a 1.81%, and that would be for the administrative group, the confidential staff group, and the support staff. Again, they would get a CPI increase of 1.81. And then the teacher movement it's called sub-levels, where they would move a sub-level, which is $900 per sub-level. And then there are teachers, remember that there's also a level movement, and there would be 8 teachers that would move under that. So the breakdown would be for administration, confidential staff, and support staff. That CPI would be a cost of $20,465 total. For the total level movements, sub-level and level, would be $51,153. So the total cost for wage increase for staff would be $71,617. So questions on that? Again, just looking for a discussion tonight. And,
With the way the spring went and how abruptly we ended school, were the teacher reviews and everything with that, were they able to be done? Or are we just not finished that in the spring and then starting over now? How did that end?
yeah, because of, I'll be honest, Shelley, a lot of the reviews are done, towards that late winter, springtime. So everything that we had completed, we rolled over at that point. And this year we've talked as an admin team about how we're going to do educator effectiveness this year. And I'll be very honest, we're still discussing it just because of the situation with not being in school. And so what level of educator effectiveness that we will be doing. So I think that's something that we need to talk further about and then bring back to the board. Again, just because of the situation. I think we'll still do some type of evaluation, but I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like right at this point, because we're trying to just get started. So. But in terms of, again, I will just remind the board that if a teacher is what is called in need of improvement by your employee handbook, you can freeze salary based on that. So currently we don't have anybody that fits in that category.
When you were talking, Dave, you didn't mention support staff. You said teachers, administrators, and certified people, but you didn't mention custodians, did you? Oh, I missed it. I didn't write it down then. So paraprofessionals?
Yeah,
staff?
Jack,
Which
they,
group is
I'm
that?
sorry. So the support staff is included in that group of well, it's broken down administrators, confidential staff, which is the people in the office, specifically Jody, Jean, Angie, Mike Stang, and then the support staff, which is the other group, that's aides, custodians, et cetera.
Paraprofessionals are
Paraprofessionals, yes.
included in
Yep.
support.
Okay.
And if you want, if I can give you a breakdown further, if you want it.
No, I just didn't hear it, and I was just wanting to make sure that they were included. 'Cause
Yep, yep.
I value the work that they do, of course. So 1.8% CPI for that group, and then levels and movement for teachers. Any discussion on overload pay for elementary teachers with the work that they're putting in with cleaning the desks, lack of prep time, that kind of stuff? I looked through information that I requested about overload pay for middle school, high school, and if they get, if I'm understanding it right, a 45-minute prep, only one, then they get overload pay, but that's probably more than elementary teachers get. So I'd like to have a discussion about that.
Yeah, and that could certainly, if the board wants to discuss that. And again, the overload pay wouldn't be in this, it would be that, okay, if you determine that because of the circumstances and everything, and obviously Mike can talk very more in depth about how the prep times, but I appreciate that, Jack, because yeah, I think everybody is doing a lot more. I shouldn't say a lot. They're doing more because of how we're having to structure school. So
If I'm reading it right, 10 middle high school teachers get overload pay. A couple, one gets quad overload pay. I'm not quite sure that. A couple get double overload pay. Must be one each semester. So, but I truly think that the elementary teachers are putting in an extreme amount of time this year with the cleaning and the no prep and the coming right to the rooms, all the things that they're doing. So I would like that addressed.
yeah, that again, that would be outside of this, but if that's something that the board wants us to provide more information for on, again, Mike can certainly talk about the elementary, and then Rick can talk middle school, high school. If you wish for me to put that as a discussion item and for the future, I'd be glad to do that.
Well, I'd also like to discuss, and we approved tonight, $100 a month for the administrators for their cell phones. I'd like to talk about that for teachers. They use their cell phones as much as administrators do in these days. Administrators get $100 a month. You got less, Dave, I see in yours, but teachers, I had a teacher text me the other day about something. I know teachers use their cell phones for school business.
You have a proposal?
Sure, I'll propose that we pay teachers $100 a month for their cell phones.
Would that be part of their contract or not?
No, I guess I would find out how it would need to be structured, Julie. I mean, in terms of, like it's in our contract. So I would talk to Bob and say, okay, how is this a employee handbook thing or is it an individual contract? We could, again, if you want me to do more research on it, I'd be glad to bring it back.
I will say, I think it's a valid point, and I think when the administrators were granted that, it was a different time. I mean, technology has evolved so much. I think it's a valid point. How we do it, whether we do it, is certainly worth talking about.
Go ahead and investigate it.
Okay. Okay. I'll do that.
I know some employers do like a discount on it. So like some big companies will give you a discount depending on what carriers you have too. The only, there's a lot of different things that I think you can do with that.
Yeah, the first thing I would do is find out comparables, what are our districts doing this? Well, how do you do it? And then I would, obviously, is it in the individual contract employee handbook? I could do research on that. And okay.
Thank you.
Dave, we typically talk about this in the spring, correct?
Right. We have generally, Tina, approved you know, if it fits in the budget, generally I'd say May, June. But again, the reason why we held off was we did not know what the state budget was going to look like. And the biggest thing was it going to affect state aid to the point where we would have to make budget changes?
Right.
So some districts, I know, a number of districts approve raises in the spring, and but my recommendation to you was hold off, let's see what it looks like. And now, because the budget repair bill did not happen, which was beneficial, obviously, for education. As I said last night at the budget hearing, we are able to put it in the budget, balanced budget. So my recommendation obviously would be that we approve it in November. Then what would happen was we'd do a back pay and all of that.
You would do a back pay.
Yep.
So then are the new staff that we hired and the new teachers we hired this year in this amount, or were?
No, they're
figured-
because the new
They
teacher.
hired on at that.
Yes,
Okay.
so
I
they're
just
not.
wanted to make sure that was clear.
I can attest to what Dave said. At CISA, we talked about it, and I think 10 different school districts are represented at our meeting, and I think Bangor and one other school was the only schools that didn't give the CPI in the spring. I understand that there's questions now amongst community members because some people are out of jobs, some people are laid off. And, you know, I understand that we need to take that into consideration. But I also think that all of the work that our teachers have endured through this pandemic and comparable, as like Dave said, I think it's something that we need to move on.
Well, and I think obviously it would certainly be a morale booster based on what we're working with now and facing. So I will bring it put it on the agenda for November 18th meeting. Thank you. Next up, E, discussion of formatted board agendas. In your packet, I put some information starting on page 36 through 38, which is our board agenda revised, and I'll talk about what I'm asking for in just a little bit. Then on pages 39 and 40 is the agenda from Sparta, their regular meeting in September. And then on page 41 and 42 is from Western Technical College. And the reason I put that in there is as you know, I'm on the board, and we went to this format. So what I'm asking the board to consider is as I look at the clock and trying to make the board meetings more efficient. And what this is if you look on page 37 and 38, the usual items that are on every board meeting, including financials, vouchers, activity reports, minutes, in a little bit, we're going to talk about the second semester early college credit program, open enrollment alternative apps, and we discussed the 660301 agreement, and other things that would fit under the consent agenda would be looking at other districts' board agendas, is things like revision to board policies. Not new policies, but revisions. Employment, if there aren't any type of questions that would be normal types of hires. Medical leave requests. And so what it does by grouping those things there is it just improves the efficiency of the meeting. Now, I want to remind the board that any item can be removed at any time. So if somebody said, hey, Dave, I want to know more about this, you could call me and say, I'd want this moved out into regular approval, or that evening for whatever reason, if you said, hey, I want more information on that. But what it does in talking to the other superintendents, excuse me, is that a lot of times if there are questions, and I'll say, for example, like questions on the vouchers, that they would call or email ahead of time and say, what about this? What about this? And then honestly, most of the time it's, yep, I'm good with that. And then, so that you leave it under the consent agenda. But again, allowing the removal of any of those items, if board members do have questions, or any other types of concerns, you can do that. But it would move, very honestly, the meetings along more quickly. And I don't think that any of us would disagree with being more efficient and being out, moving along, meetings along more quickly. Obviously, like the major items, if you're looking at things, I just wrote a couple, you know, if next year when we're talking about the referendum, I mean, that you don't put that under the big capital projects or those types of things. Because like if you look at Sparta's on page 40, they did put stuff on under their finance and facilities committee discussion possible action. So again, you would keep those types of items on a regular approval agenda. So questions? Is this something
Well,
that you
I'm
would?
all in favor of doing it more efficiently.
Yep.
And if there's a way for us to do it and still obtain the same end result, then I say we should pursue it.
If something is listed under the consent agenda, hypothetically, and no one specifically calls that out for discussion during the meeting, it just lives there, and then at the end, we vote on it.
Yeah, and again, Paul, remember, this would be, just like it is with this revised one, it would be near the end of the meeting. So again, if there was something that came up or whatever, but you would, even at that point, if you said, hey, I didn't get a chance to talk to Dave, so I want more information on this, we could still pull it out.
Dave, I have a question. So you send out the meeting agenda, notes, etc., the Friday before. I read something on Sunday. I was like, oh, I need to know more information. I could call you.
Oh, gosh, yes, yeah.
And if I get the information, I'm okay with that. Or I could ask you to put it on to pull that from the consent and put it on the agenda.
Correct, correct.
Any of us could do that.
Yes.
I have some concerns. I think it's less transparent. I've had a concern of a tax member brought to me this week about asking you about something and you wouldn't share it. I called WASB and they told me you are supposed to share things when people ask for them that are on the board agenda. I think when you're putting things under the consent agenda without information, people are asking about it. I literally just got a text that said, but how are we going to see it? I can read it to you. 1 second. If you won't share it, it says, and this is, how will the public know this if you don't discuss a public meeting since you won't share information in another way? So if you share the board packet, if you share it in the board packet, everyone's supposed to be able to ask for a copy of the board packet and have access to it.
If they ask for the information, and I will get that to them. And so I guess I'm not understanding your question, Jack.
Because that's not the message that you've given people that have called. Let's use the Harvard model example. People wanted that before the meeting and you said, no, I'm not going to give it to you. And then maybe a couple hours before the meeting, you finally gave it to them.
Yeah.
But they were asking for it and
Right.
they are supposed to have access to this. Once you send this to us, this is for everybody to look at. So this to me just feels like another way to just like not share things and hide things. So I'm all for more efficiency as well. And believe me, I don't want to be sitting here any longer, but I think there's a part of a public transparency that we need to address.
Well, and then again, as I said, that you can, if you feel you want more information on that, you can ask for it. Either ahead of time or you can pull it out during the meeting.
Well, even if it's on the consent agenda, it's not hidden. It's listed as what's on the
Yes.
consent agenda, correct?
Yes.
I mean, you don't really remove the context of it,
Right.
do you?
There's just, yes, there's just less expectation of discussion about it. So it's just like we blankly approve the consent agenda. Whereas if you have them item by item, there's more chance for discussion for it
Mhm.
amongst the board members.
Mhm.
And public can comment before the meeting starts, but not during the meeting. So that's just my thoughts.
Just to clarify that the Harvard model is widely available, like everywhere. So to use that as an example is a little bit of a stretch, Jack.
No, it wasn't the Harvard model. It was specifically the Bangor.
Exactly. And that's where, that's,
Bangor.
if you let me finish, that's where I'm going. We were going to modify the Harvard model to adapt it to Bangor's purposes. We didn't have a discussion as a board or vote on that yet, so why would we share that publicly?
Because parents and public can only comment before the meeting. So they wanted to see what they were commenting on before we decided on it. They wanted to see what are we supposed to comment on? We can't see it.
So, okay, so then, then we're equally as blind coming in as a board if, you know, everything's wild, wild west?
No, they wanted to, I understand this. Okay, public comment is usually, it wasn't last time because it was the annual meeting, but it's usually the first thing on the agenda or one of the first things.
Mhm.
So they said, I want to see what I'm commenting on before I comment because I don't know what I'm commenting on. And Dave wouldn't share it. And so, and we saw it, like it went to us over the whatever weekend or whatever. So they're supposed to have access to it. So that's the
was-
transparency.
It was not approved by us, so there was no Bangor model there yet. It was for discussion, but it was modified.
Right, but they have the right to see what we saw. What we're going to discuss, they have the right to see. So they
Okay,
can
so
comment before.
let's
it
use the
starts.
example of the minutes from the prior meeting. Officially, minutes from the prior meeting aren't official and to be published until after the board votes on it. So last meeting's minutes aren't official and adopted until we voted on it tonight. However, they were in our packet. So using that as an example, do we send out those unapproved minutes to
Yes,
everyone to
they
ask
have
for them?
access to see them. Yes, they know that they're not approved, but they have access to see them.
I think we just have a difference of opinion.
I agree.
There's a fundamental difference here, and that is we're always looking for a conspiracy. And if you keep looking, if you can't find one, you're gonna make one. I think it's a little bit unbecoming of a board member to publicly accuse our district administrator of constant cover-ups, conspiracies, and lying. And I just hope we can get past that. That's all I have to say.
All I'm saying is, that's how I'm reading this, is there's less discussion, there's less availability for, and I am so happy that there are public people here tonight watching and seeing, and people are getting to see now virtually so they can see what's going on. I think
Yeah, we're
that's a good
shining
thing.
light on all this bad stuff that's going on. My question to you, Jack, is where has all this conspiracy been the 8 years you were employed here?
Well, I have.
You were also a
information.
taxpayer
Mhm.
and a parent then. Why all of a sudden is everything dirty and under the rug and you got to expose everything? We, the rest of us, I can't speak for the others like you tend to do, speak for the other board members. I have been here a long time, you know. Every time you make one of these accusations in your email where Dave, parentheses, you never follow the law, et cetera, et cetera. Every time you make one of those accusations, you're implicating all of us on the board as well. We're just a bunch of dumb country bumpkins that have just been sitting here going along, and lo and behold, here comes Jack, the smartest person in the world, and they're gonna tell us how we've been doing everything wrong. You were here as an employee. There was never a conspiracy then. There was
Well,
never a complaint about
I
paying
tried-
too high a wages when you asked for more money for your teachers. But now all of a sudden, now the whole world is a big cover-up and you're going to expose it.
I did try to bring things up and I was refused to have a discussion with. So I asked to have discussions with the board.
Jack, that's not true. I told
Okay, let's
you,
go back to where we were at the beginning.
I
So
told
what we
you-
were talking about was improving our meeting, right? So where do we want to go with improving our meeting? Like, I agree with you, Lori, that would be great. If it doesn't work, switch it back. Or if we want our consent agenda broken up and people want to talk about it, great. I bring up my issues usually at a meeting. So if people are worried about me asking questions, I don't have a problem with that and I will ask them. I'm fine with the switch. If it doesn't work, then I want to go back. But That's my opinion at this point.
With
So-
regards to changing the agenda, from my opinion then, oftentimes, a new board president, new realigned board, a new district administrator is going to have a different way of doing things. So it's very possible that we could be making a change now and be making a change again in a few months. It's not to say we shouldn't change because of what might happen, but just something else to consider.
So again, I will do what you want me to do if you choose to remain with this format and until you hire a new superintendent and he or she wants to revise the agenda. I was just simply looking for efficiency. I think there is a vehicle to ask questions by the board beforehand during the meeting. And then the point about discussion during a board meeting, again, Julie has every right to recognize people in the audience if she allows discussion from the audience on an agenda topic. So you can do that. So please let me know if you wish me to keep it as is. I'm fine with that.
I would say at this time, let's just leave it as it is.
Fine with that, so. Okay, next agenda item, approve retirement of district administrator. It has been my pleasure and honor to serve as your district administrator the last 8.5 years. But it is time for me to move on. It is time for me to move on to the next stage of my life. And so I are asking your approval of my retirement effective at the end of the current school year. I do want to comment, I am super excited for this district. This is a great district with a great community, great parents, great support, great staff, great kids, great board, great administration. And I think this is going to be the type of job that a lot of very qualified candidates will want to apply for. And I'm proud of what we have done these last 8.5 years. And I will continue to work very hard over these last, how many months? I'm not counting down yet. So until the end, which my contract is June 30th. So I'm asking for the board to approve my retirement at the close of this school year. So.
I move to accept the retirement request of our district administrator.
Second.
Motion made by Jack, seconded by Joni to approve retirement of District Administrator Dave Lane. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Dave, thank you for your years of service here at Bangor. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'd like to publicly ask that when the replacement process starts, that we do that as a board discussion and not as a proposal brought to us that's discussed before the board meeting. So maybe in closed session.
Say that again.
I said I'd like to request that when a replacement is discussed, that we do that as a board and not as a private meeting that you come and bring to us the suggestion. So I'd like the whole board to be involved in that discussion about the replacement process.
Yes, that's how we did it when we hired Dave. Yes, so I was involved with that. Many of us were, so we will continue that process. Thank you. Celebrations?
I want to celebrate having kids back in the school. It was, I know that the elementary has been back 3 weeks and they've been doing a great job. And then we brought back the middle school kids in a hybrid model of the week before. It was really nice to walk down to in the middle school, high school, and see kids in our building in both ends. So I want to celebrate that having students back in person. And I hope that we are able to continue that going forward. So it's great to have kids back.
I agree. Okay, moving on, removal of items from the consent agenda. As you can see, the consent agenda has 2 items.
Julie, if I wanted to have Rick explain a little bit about the list of the second semester early college credit program, and then also the basketball coaches, one who has been a previous coach and one who's new. So Rick, can you, before they vote on that, can you explain, please?
Yes. The ECCP at Star College now, the list is long, but the students haven't been able to register yet. So they've submitted multiple classes for approval, but they won't be taking, not all of those classes will be registered for. So it looks longer than what will actually be taken, but they wanted approval in case some were closed, they could take a different one. As far as basketball coaches, our 8th grade coached last year. Our 7th grade coach is a community member. Now that the schedule has changed, has to see what the new schedule is as far as games, but I'd like to move ahead with that as well.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Joni, seconded by Shelley to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
Jack abstaining, motion carried. Thank you. I do not think we have any reason for closed session.
Nope.
Okay. So I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Paul, seconded by Shelley. Roll call vote. Tina?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey.
Aye.
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 Motion carried. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.